President Obama is speaking right now at the Democratic National Convention on stage. We'll go live to that and then continue our program right here.
The ties that bind us together are still there. We still coach Little League and look out for our elderly neighbors. We still feed the hungry in churches and mosques and synagogues and temples. We share the same pride when our Olympic athletes compete for the gold. Because the vast majority of us do not want to live in a country that's bitter and divided. We want something better. We want to be better. And the joy and the excitement that we're seeing around this campaign tells us we're not alone. You know, I've spent a lot of time thinking about these past few months because, as Michelle mentioned, this summer we lost her mom, Ms. Marion Robinson. And I don't know that anybody has ever loved their mother-in-law any more than I love mine. Mostly it's because she was funny and wise and the least pretentious person I knew. That, and she always defended me with Michelle when I messed up. I'd hide behind her. But I also think one of the reasons Mary and I became so close was she reminded me of my grandmother, the woman who helped raise me as a child. And on the surface, the two of them did not have a lot in common. One was a black woman from right here, south side of Chicago, right down the way. Went to Englewood High School. The other was a little old white lady born in a tiny town called Peru, Kansas. Now, I know there aren't that many people from Peru. And yet they shared a basic outlook on life. They were strong, smart, resourceful women, full of common sense, who, regardless of the barriers they encountered, and women growing up in the 40s and 50s and 60s, they encountered barriers. They still went about their business without fuss or complaint, and provided an unshakable foundation of love for their children and their grandchildren. In that sense, they both represented an entire generation of working people who, through war and depression, discrimination and limited opportunity, helped build this country. A lot of them toiled every day at jobs that were often too small for them and didn't pay a lot. They willingly went without just to keep a roof over their families' heads, just to give their children something better. They knew what was true. They knew what mattered. Things like honesty and integrity, kindness and hard work. They weren't impressed with braggarts or bullies. They didn't think putting other people down lifted you up or made you strong. They didn't spend a lot of time obsessing about what they didn't have. Instead, they appreciated what they did. They found pleasure in simple things. A card game with friends, a good meal, and laughter around the kitchen table. Helping others. And most of all, seeing their children do things and go places that they would have never imagined for themselves. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican or somewhere in between. We have all had people like that in our lives. People like Kamala's parents, who crossed oceans because they believed in the promise of America. People like Tim's parents, who taught him about the importance of service. Good, hard-working people who weren't famous or powerful, but who managed in countless ways to leave this country just a little bit better than they found it. As much as any policy or program, I believe that's what we yearn for. A return to an America where we work together and look out for each other. A restoration of what Lincoln called, on the eve of Civil War, our bonds of affection. An America that taps what he called the better angels of our nature. That is what this election is about. And I believe that's why, if we each do our part over the next 77 days, if we knock on doors, if we make phone calls, if we talk to our friends, if we listen to our neighbors, if we work like we've never worked before, if we hold firm to our convictions, we will elect Kamala Harris as the next President of the United States and Tim Walz as the next Vice President of the United States. We will elect leaders up and down the ballot who will fight for the hopeful, forward-looking America we all believe in. And together, we too will build a country that is more secure and more just, more equal, and more free. So let's get to work. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
There you have it, the former President of the United States, President Obama, on stage. You know, on this program, The Pulse, we like to say by the numbers. I'll give you two numbers right now as you watch that euphoria take part in Chicago right now. 16, that's how many years ago this man stood on this very stage accepting the nomination and then naming Joe Biden as his own vice president. And 77, that's how many days that this man says we have until it's time to put hope back in the White House, as he said, putting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz back in the White House. On the other side of the political coin, of course, you had our former president, Donald Trump, in Michigan today, not far from here in Southfield, out in Livingston County, talking to a group of law enforcement agents about why he thinks he's the right man for the job. And so certainly a lot to get to, a lot to dive into on this night two of the Democratic National Convention. And so let's take a look as we continue to see who's who in the Democratic Party on stage tonight, from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. And yes, you saw it just a few moments ago, perhaps if you were following this, former First Lady Michelle Obama, who touted Harris's qualifications and tweaked Trump for a line he had during the debate. Take a listen.
See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
Then her husband, former President Obama, took the stage a little after 11 o'clock. He paid tribute to President Biden, I should say, his former VP, and then turned to the current race, saying it's going to be a fight, and it'll come down to every last vote, touting Harris's career, saying she's up for the nation's highest office. Take a listen.
Kamala Harris is ready for the job. This is a person who has spent her life fighting on behalf of people who need a voice and a champion. As you heard from Michelle, Kamala was not born into privilege. She had to work for what she's got. And she actually cares about what other people are going through. She's not the neighbor running the leaf blower. She's the neighbor rushing over to help when you need a hand.
There was a lot to get to at the DNC. In fact, a little star power. Rapper Lil Jon appeared during the United Center event during Georgia's roll call. We can't show you that because of music rights rules, but basically he rapped to the tune of "Turned Down for What?" rapping his support for Harris and Walz. And yes, he said VP Harris to the walls for all of you 2000s pop fans out there.
Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, President and Vice President of the United States?
And that speech is what kicked everything off, a fiery address with an emotional beginning by President Biden, beginning his long political farewell and urging Americans to vote for the Harris-Walz ticket. It started at 11:30 and ended after midnight. But as we always say, this is a show that puts you first. So we hit the streets today to ask you what you thought of President Biden's speech. Here now, a pulse check.
I thought it was awesome. He looked really good, and I was so proud of him, and I watched it to the very end.
I was in tears. I was in awe, and I was so proud of him. He did such a great job.
I thought he came out full of fire. He was very energetic. President looked better than I've seen him look in a while. He looked really sharp last night.
Well, you saw just how emotional the president was at the beginning of his speech after his daughter introduced him. Fox's Connor Hansen was in the room where it happened at the United Center in Chicago. He joins us now tonight. Connor, this is just an amazing night. Of course, Obama speaking, so many others. But when Biden walked out and actually saw his daughter on stage and did this whole goodbye, it was a historic moment in so many great ways.
Yeah, that was definitely the most poignant moment of the speech, to me at least. We saw him walk out and almost have to wipe a tear off his face, embracing his daughter for an extended period of time. And it took a long time before he could even start his speech because this crowd was cheering. They were cheering, "We love you, Joe." And that went on for at least 5-10 minutes before President Biden went on an almost hour-long speech going late into the night.
Yeah, it's interesting because you take a look at when Biden was able to take to the stage. Many people are saying, he was kind of buried, and maybe they should have given him the honor of being earlier in the night because showing up at late, close to midnight, isn't exactly primetime slots.
That's exactly right. I think part of the issue that night was so many speakers were planned that did go later than they originally planned, but it was very late. And if you're watching at home on TV, you might have tuned out or gone to bed at that point, but I'll tell you, the United Center was completely full and it was electric inside, and people were jacked up to see President Biden. We do know from the DNC that they do plan to tighten things up a little bit for the future so they can get those headline speakers on right in time.
Yeah, this is not their first rodeo, and if you're looking to feature someone and give them the respect they deserve, perhaps that could have been done a little bit differently. But let's talk about the protests right now that we're having outside. 15,000 protesters. The situation in Gaza right now, President Biden addressed it, and a lot of people are going to be waiting to see how Harris addresses this on Thursday.
That's right, and President Biden was definitely hoping he could come out on stage and say they had a ceasefire deal, but while the U.S. has been optimistic about them getting one, it doesn't sound like they're quite that close, so we will see those protests throughout the rest of the night. We did see a couple minor issues last night. A handful of protesters was able to break through one of the barricades nearby the United Center, but police here in Chicago were able to stop them quickly. About a dozen people were arrested. We haven't heard anything too consequential yet, but we'll have a close eye on it, and we know police have this entire area locked down with even more barricades after that incident.
All right, Connor, last question, and the hardcore politicos out there are going to roll their eyes, and I can hear it all the way here in Studio C, but we understand that there's a chance that Taylor Swift may show up on Thursday. What are people saying on the floor about that?
Well, we've heard a lot of those rumors so far throughout the convention, and we've definitely seen some stars show up already. Common performing already, and some other artists and celebrity guests introducing some of these people. So I think a lot of those will have to be a surprise.
And that's why they call it a surprise. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, stay tuned. Connor Hansen for us in Chicago at the DNC. Thanks for that report here today. And Connor, while you were inside, of course, outside the DNC, we saw these scenes, pro-Palestinian protesters and police clashing not far from the United Center where you just saw Connor. Now, we know at least one arrest was made during this incident. Demonstrators also burned both an Israeli and American flag. And because of that, while that one of the flags was being burned, the person who burned it got into some kind of a fight with somebody who was objecting to it. So you had a lot of people on the streets, some tense moments there. But in all, 15,000 protesters in the last few days outside the DNC. The theme of this particular protest was, quote, shut down the DNC. We'll see, of course, as we get closer to Kamala Harris's acceptance speech, how these protesters do in the next few days. We have our eyes on inside and outside the United Center through the next few days. Now to the other side of the ticket, former President Trump back in Michigan in truly friendly territory today. He was in Howell at the Livingston County Sheriff's Office, a county that's consistently voted Republican, whether it's in the presidential, gubernatorial, or Senate races. And he made this claim about crime since the Biden administration took office.
Since Comrade Kamala Harris took office, her administration's crime statistics show she's presided over a 43% increase in violent crime. These are all government numbers. 43% increase in violent crime. I'll bet the people behind me don't have anything like that. It just gets better, it doesn't get worse. Including a 58% increase in rape, 89% increase in aggravated assault, and a 56% increase in robbery. The crime in America, the fact is out of control.
Oh, here's the deal. If Kamala Harris says something and she puts numbers out there that aren't true, we are checking them. Here's a reality check of what we heard Donald Trump say. This is a graph from the FBI. This is from the FBI, the U.S. government, the data that we see. While violent crime did drop between 2017 and 2019, as you see here, it actually sharply increased in 2020, and then it dropped in 2021, the year Biden and Harris took office. And once again, from 2021 to 2022, you see that drop again. And so we just want to make sure that we're keeping all of our politicians on check. And yes, we've done it with Biden before, we've done it with Harris, and we'll continue to do it with all three and all of the VP candidates as well. Now, this is the FBI statistics on rape cases. While there was a sharp increase from 2020 to 2021, there was also a significant drop in the next year. You can see that right over here. We're still lower than the 2018 and 2019 when Trump actually was in office. And so these statistics, by the way, are right from the FBI, from the U.S. government. Aggravated assault, that actually saw a huge jump from 2019 to 2020, again, when former President Trump was in office. And since 2021, when Biden and Harris took office, it's been on a decline. Again, these aren't our numbers. These are government statistics. And finally, the last crime he referenced, robbery. That's one that steadily declined since 2017 when Trump was in office and only went up slightly between 2021 and 2022, but it did go up nonetheless. But as you can still see, it's still lower than the highest point of Trump's term. And so we've said it before, we'll say it again, this show plays it right down the middle. We have no agenda here. What we just talked about is not a left thing or a right thing, it's just right and wrong. The statistics Trump referenced don't actually reflect the FBI data. And we will continue to fact check both sides, Democrat and Republican, to make sure you're properly informed as you get ready to vote. And yes, you know that Kamala Harris just came up with her policy points. As she continues to stump and talk, we'll be listening closely and then, of course, bringing statistics of this reality check with her campaign as well. That visit does bring us, though, to our second pulse check of the night. Do candidate visits in general actually impact who you'll vote for in the election? If you want to vote, you can scan the QR code on your screen right now. So far, the vast majority of you say no, these visits don't make a difference. Now, we have a loaded show for you tonight. Next. You had the TV on, you probably turned your head, you heard that theme song. Back now on the Pulse, it is time to let it rip on a busy week in politics from the Motor City to the Windy City and beyond. We're joined now by Detroit City Council member Mary Waters, attorney and conservative advocate Terry Johnson, and Mr. Let It Rip himself, Fox 2 anchor and attorney Charlie Langton. Good to see all three of you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We only have about 10 minutes. Let's get into it, but we should mention that there was a little bit of scuffle between Mary Waters and Terry in the parking lot, and as you can see,
Mary won.
Mary won, and she came out looking great. You had this. No, but honestly, I know you're dealing with a recovery right now. We thank you for joining us nonetheless here. All right, so let's talk about this. Here we have the DNC. We're going to begin with a Republican in the room because the DNC is getting a lot of blue play right now, and a lot of play on the airwaves. So far, from what you've heard from Kamala Harris's policy points that she unveiled last week, anything at all that you heard that you agree with, that you think is good for this country?
I haven't heard anything from Kamala Harris. She's talking everything through her spokespeople. This is what, day 31. She hasn't done a news conference. We don't know where she stands. She talks about price gauging, not gouging, again, teleprompter issues. She doesn't know economics. And if you look at what people need, especially here in the Metro Detroit area, we need to take inflation down. We need jobs. We need more money in our pockets. She's not talking about.
Okay, let's talk about some of the policy points you did bring up. Up to $25,000 of a home loan given to first-time home buyers. A plan to help government price fixing because she believes that some of these prices are outrageous. Those two in itself, does that sit well with you?
Well, let's talk about the price fixing. One second, Mary, I'm sorry. The price fixing. This all started under her. It wasn't an issue under Donald Trump. And the $25,000, well, gee, thanks. The value of my house just went up another $25,000.
Mary Waters, can we afford this, by the way? $1.7 trillion price tag on this package that she's talking about.
Well, we can, and more. If we start by cutting the Pentagon budget for one. But
don't worry about protecting the borders.
Let me just say this, is that I was quite impressed with some of the things that she laid out, because I know what the issues are here. Say, for example, in the city of Detroit, housing. She's putting that out there, building about 3 million additional housing, affordable housing. We need that right here in this city. We've been doing exactly that, but we need help from the federal government in order to get that done. And the $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, that is great. We're already doing that here too.
Can we do something without the government?
She also talked about things for single moms, helping out single mothers, helping them to get to that place where they need to be.
But I got to ask you a question, Mary. But here's the issue. Here's the issue. If we were all in a car together and we were driving and we were on ice and we were going 90 miles an hour and we were spinning out of control, about to hit a wall called the recession, and we avoid it and we all slow down, catch our breath, and then you say, let's go do this again and spend another $1.7 trillion. That's the argument. Can you see why that argument holds some water?
I don't.
Inflation is a thing, isn't it?
Because we have places we can take money from. We do. I mean, I said it, and I'll say it again, that Pentagon budget, we have the largest budget, Pentagon budget, war budget, if you will, than any country in this world.
Charlie, so Kamala Harris says,
that money back
Kamala Harris says,
help us with housing, help us with down payment assistance, help us with single moms. Those are the kinds of things we need to do.
Charlie, VP Harris said in a scrum that she did with some reporters just yesterday that the way we'd pay for it is that these projects would stimulate the economy and then pay for itself. Do you think that that's a strategy?
I think she's playing to a base that she needs some votes with. Listen, she's been the vice president. Biden's been the president for 3.5 years. They could have easily have done this or increased the stimulus package. They had a stimulus package. Just add it and make it affordable housing. I've been very in favor of owning your own home. If I was running for anything, I'd put renters out of business. I want people to own their own homes. And you know what? I don't mind that the federal government assists people in a first-time home buy. I think that is a legitimate way to create generational wealth and wealth in general. So I'm okay with it. Now, the only issue, though, is should it have been done the last 3.5 years? They had a full whole Congress, they've spent a ton of money. And if this was a real priority, to make it a priority, a big priority of her campaign, why wasn't it done before? That's your argument.
And here's the bigger issue is, again, we keep talking about money, and you keep saying, again, democratic principles, the federal government needs to do this, the government needs to do that.
Why shouldn't the federal government do it? Let them do it.
The government should give us opportunities, should get regulations out of the way and give us opportunities to move forward. Everybody can't own businesses. Not everybody was...
Okay, Terry.
And we need to keep some of those regulations in place to keep people safe.
So, Terry, we talk about inflation because of spending. That's what the Democrats are blamed for. Let's talk about Trump's plan. Tax breaks for the rich and the very wealthy. That also can cause a real problem with the economy. Can you see how that's an issue as well?
And let's talk about that. Those tax cuts come all the way down, and let's go back. Those tax cuts were put in place when he was in office.
But they cost money, Terry, doesn't it?
They did cost money, but everybody else had money in their pockets. The bigger thing, and if we look at the Democrat plan right now, guess what? Kamala Harris is looking at 21 to 28% on corporate taxes. And here's the thing. Here's the key. Corporations don't pay taxes. You know what they do? They pass them on to the four of us, which runs cost up. And then where's the money coming from?
But see, you're talking that same old thing that they've been doing time and time again, taking care of the top 1%.
No, take care of everybody.
Country. No, that is not what happens. And then when they reap all these benefits, they don't pass it along to their employees.
Sure they did under Trump. He brought all those jobs back. He brought those companies back. And what did he do? He did it by cutting the tax rate. Because right now, if I'm going to have a company, why would I build a company here in America where I'm paying a 28% corporate tax when I can go to Ireland and pay 12?
Well, you said you're not paying it. Corporations aren't paying it. They're passing it on. They're taking its salaries and bonuses to the top of the leaders. The rich people are getting all the money anyway. It's not trickling down necessarily.
Okay, let's talk about the border. I want to really address the border. We got so stuck and caught up in whether or not people called Kamala Harris the border czar or not that we have forgotten the real conversation that just has to happen here. The border has been in crisis for many years. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris did a good job in taking care of it in any way?
Are you asking me?
I am asking you. As a Democrat, do you believe that this is a leader who has assigned something and accomplished something when it comes to the border? Did she do a good job with the border?
There's still a lot of work to be done.
But did she do a good job, do you think?
Just say no.
I said,
do you think she did a good job?
Say no.
Come on. Deep breath and no.
Ms. Waters, did she do a good job with the border? Do you believe that?
There has to be additional work done. What is the problem?
But what did she do?
What is wrong with coming up with good, sound policy that leads to what? Citizenship. What is wrong with that?
Why did she do it 1,306 days ago? Before she got in office. Why is it a priority now?
Maybe her hands were tied. There has to be something.
By Biden?
Well, it's possible. We know,
and we all know where his...
But Charlie, let's talk about...
But the border has been a mess for a very long time.
The border has been a mess.
A very, very long time.
And she made it worse. Border crossings
I cannot say that she made it worse.
down.
You just blame her for that.
10 million crossings versus 2 million?
There are a lot of people that are
border crossings are down, and part of the reason border crossings are down
for the month.
Because a month and a half ago, President Biden decided to do something using executive action. But let's talk a little bit about how well we know VP Harris. For all of these years, people used to ask the question, where is VP Harris? People would criticize her and say, how come she doesn't show up? Now, all of a sudden, she's the golden child of the Democratic Party. How quick was that switch, Charlie?
Very quickly. I think realistically, Joe Biden made the right move by not running. It is tough. I think President Trump, even today, was a little slow. Listen, they get up in age. It's a very hectic schedule.
Sure.
Forget about him for a moment. President Biden, I think he would have been destroyed in this race, only because I don't think he was up for the job, really. The right move would be to make Kamala Harris. Now, the question is, do we know her? Do we know what her policies are? What have we seen in the last 3.5 years? And we haven't seen a ton. So I think we still have to get to know her. She's going to get a big boost because of this convention, and she got a big boost when she was selected. But I think we're going to have to really scrutinize her to see, are the policies that she is talking about really ones that we want to embrace?
Can you trust her?
I don't know.
Speaking of that, she doesn't make policy. It's the Congress that does that. They need to make the policy, and then it's up to
But she
the
can take
president's
executive
office.
actions. That's what's scary.
She can veto, too.
She can veto. Vetoes can be overridden,
and she's been the deciding vote in a lot. But Terry, I want to ask you about Trump.
Yes.
Particularly one thing.
Why would you come up with that about the trust? How do you know?
Former President Trump, after the assassination attempt, said that I'm going to run a campaign based on unity and decency. 2 days ago, he said, I'm better looking than Kamala Harris, and everybody knows that I'm better looking. Is this the kind of person who can lead our country?
Come on, Roop.
But do you believe that that's unity? Is that promoting decency?
Roop, come on, let's be real. That's a joke, okay? If you ask me who's better looking, Kamala Harris, by far, okay? Way better.
I'm talking about the rhetoric, though. Do you think that that's the kind of rhetoric that helps us as a country?
But here's the question. When it comes to Donald Trump, we're going to say, oh, my God, he said this. If you look at the stats I saw today, 84% of every report, ABC, CBS, NBC, is positive about Kamala Harris. 89% is negative. That comment right there just goes to what I'm saying.
I know. I can tell you one thing. We're going to get the hate mail from both sides because we ask tough questions about Harris and we ask tough questions about Trump. It's our job, and we'll do it every single time we show up here. We thank Charlie, we thank Mary, and we thank Terry for joining us here. And if you ever get into a fight with Mary Waters, you look at Terry and tell you won't be. We're diving even deeper into this wild election year. Back now on the Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics from the Motor City to D.C. You know, it's the very start of a very busy week for both campaigns with the Democratic National Convention and former President Trump's counter-programming that brought him right here to Michigan. Joining us now to talk about all things 2024 election, battleground host and political analyst, S.E. Koppen. S.E., it is so good to see you. Thanks for joining us here today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you.
It's wonderful to be with you, S.E. You know, whether it be CNN or elsewhere across the world, people hear your commentary. So it's great to have you, of course, on the battleground right here on Fox 2 and also on the Pulse. I want to ask you about what's happening right now in Chicago. That is kind of ground zero for all things DNC, obviously. When you look at Obama and someone of his stature coming out and speaking in favor of Kamala Harris, talk about that. Is there an Obama bump that we can expect because of his speech?
Yeah, Barack Obama is still a very, very popular figure inside the Democratic Party. And what he was able to do in 2008 was pull in new voters, voters that hadn't voted before. And that obviously juiced his campaign, and it was a very memorable campaign. It was historic. I see strains of that with Kamala Harris, bringing in voters who were maybe going to sit this one out, but they're now so excited to come out and vote for her. So Obama, in many ways, is the perfect person to sort of introduce her and juice her campaign. He gives an imprimatur to a lot of voters who still really, really like him.
I want to ask you about the Biden speech last night or this morning, depending on what time you caught it, because it was after midnight when it ended. But I just found it interesting that if you're really trying to honor this man in the party, why put him on so darn late? I mean, this is way past his own self-described bedtime, so to speak, but beyond anyone's bedtime. Was it a little bit odd to you?
It was, and the folks I've talked to have said they are tightening up the program because it wasn't intentional. It ran late. They ended up having to cancel some other speakers. James Taylor was, canceled. They don't want to do that again. That was a long night for everyone. I had to stay up to cover it, right. So they don't want to do that again. It's like they forgot they had 4 nights. They've got 4 nights to do stuff.
That's right.
They don't have to jam it all into one.
No, you're right. Spread it out. Essie, that's a really good point. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Trump versus Harris. What are some things that come, this convention ends, the bump happens, let's say, and now Harris really has to hit the ground running campaigning. What are some things that she needs to say to gain voters, and what does Trump need to do the same?
Kamala Harris needs to get specific. They've been riding on vibes for a few weeks, and that's worked well. But the swing state voters that I talk to on Battleground, they want to know specific solutions to the problems they have. What is the next president going to do about inflation and the cost of goods? What are they going to do about housing prices? So Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have not been specific on any of that yet. They're going to need to do that. And for Trump, the answer is real clear. Stick to the economy, crime, and immigration, and he's golden. He just can't do that. And for some reason, he really wants to lean into the personal, the ad hominem, stuff that really turns off swing state voters.
S.E. Cupp, you do a great job every night. I've had the chance to catch so much of your show, The Battleground, right here on Fox 2. We're going to look forward to you popping up here in just a few minutes on The Battleground. I want to thank you for your time, and I hope to see you back here on The Pulse.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great to see you. And that does it for this edition of The Pulse.